The Pandora Directive is a novelization of the fourth game in the Tex Murphy series. These are point-and-click adventures or graphical adventures, and they're about a private investigator. Some of the other games in the series have been turned into books, and I'll check those out at some point. I'm going to do my best to kind of paraphrase this story, because so much stuff happens in this, and yeah, it kind of gets pretty confusing. It's almost like trying to describe the movie Snatch or Lock, Stock, and Two Smoking Barrels to somebody. Anyway, we follow Tex Murphy. He's a private investigator, and at first he gets a pretty simple case from somebody. He just has to find somebody named Thomas Malloy. There are also some character building things in this because the author thankfully doesn't believe that you've read the other book or have played the video games. So we get to know Tex Murphy, we get to know some of the other supporting characters in this. It's pretty great because when I picked this up, I had no idea who Tex Murphy was. So anyway, we start off in a bar, and Tex is trying to hook up with this lady named Chelsea, who is his love interest. Well, his main love interest. He gets another one later on. Anyway, she shoots him down, takes off. There's a little back and forth between the bartender, some other guy, and Tex before Tex gets a drink from this guy named Fitzpatrick. Fitzpatrick sits down, they kind of talk for a little bit, and then Tex gets his, major mission in all of this. Find Thomas Malloy. I just want to talk a little bit about the amount of tobacco and alcohol use in this. There's a lot. Like, Tex drinks every freaking chapter. Like, if a paragraph goes by without him drinking, it's a mistake. And the author quickly rectifies it. There are also a lot of different cigarettes and tobacco products mentioned in here. Well, mostly cigarettes and cigars, but it was kind of crazy. Tex mostly smokes Lucky Strike, just in case you were wondering. So Tex gets his mission, and he starts looking into some of the people that Malloy has been around recently. And that leads him to a saloon, or kind of like just like another nightclub or something that's pretty close to where he lives. A lot of the major locations are within like walking distance of where Tex actually lives, so that's kind of fun. He learns about these boxes that Malloy sent out to people, but he doesn't take it yet. He meets up with this lady named Emily, who turns out to be Malloy's wife. She's been given a box from Malloy. Nobody really knows what it's about yet. And then the NSA tries to steal the box from Emily, and Tex kills an NSA agent. Just to let you know, in this world, the NSA can just kind of do anything. They're completely above the law and can just murder people for absolutely no reason. It's a kind of an interesting thing in this world that's been created for Tex Murphy here. It's very much a dystopian world, and yeah, it's kind of interesting. It's like somebody took a 1930s cop drama and shoved it into the year 2040 something. So the NSA picks up Tex. He basically gets threatened. He also, back up a little bit. He talks to the police for a little bit and then gets let off on the murder charge because some lady named Regan happened to witness the crime. She plays more of a role into this later. But then the NSA pick him up, and he has to deliver the box that he picked up from the dead NSA agent within 36 hours. This plot point doesn't go anywhere, by the way. It's just a weird thing. He has 36 hours to do this, so you think it's going to be a ticking clock. Then the 36 hours is over, and you still have like 100 pages left in the book. So yeah, it didn't really matter that much. So Tex hooks up with Regan to try to figure out what's going on. She tells him that she is also looking for Malloy, and she has one of the boxes. It turns out that Regan is Malloy's daughter. You find this out after Tex finds Malloy and then the NSA kills Malloy. So the whole point of this entire book, the whole mission that he's been sent on, is wrapped up in about 200 pages with Malloy being dead, and then Tex can just move on with his life. Except for he can't, so he then decides he's going to try to gather up all of the boxes. You learn that there are about 5 of them. You have 2, the one from Emily and the one from Regan. You then find out that one of the boxes was stolen. This will come up later. And yeah. So now he needs to find the other 3. This whole story leads Tex to Roswell, New Mexico, where there is a secret U.S. base there, and he just kind of gains access to it because of some mysterious telephone call that told him where he could pick up all of the credentials he's going to need. So Tex goes in there. He eventually finds both the alien that killed everyone, or the alien virus or something that killed everybody in the base, and he finds an energy cell, which he mails to Fitzpatrick. Remember Fitzpatrick? He's still here. He doesn't really do a whole lot until the end, but he's still here. Tex then goes on another mission to find Elijah Witt. He finds him, steals a box from him, and we get the most pointless frickin' part of this entire book, which I'll get into later in my likes and dislikes, but it's annoying and really didn't need to be here. So he has 3 of the boxes. He then gets another one from a storage locker in LAX. Sorry, I forgot to write that part down in here. He breaks into a storage locker in LAX, steals one of the boxes there, so now he's got 4 of them. And then Fitzpatrick just calls everybody in. So you have Regan, Tex, Elijah Witt, and Fitzpatrick all meeting up, and they discuss what they're going to do. They manage to open the boxes, and they get a hologram from Malloy, who explains to them that there's a second alien spaceship that they need to go and deal with, because it has a whole bunch of anti-hydrogen in it, which is apparently the secret to space travel, or at least long-distance space travel. Yeah, this gets really confusing. So they all decide that they're going to blow up the ship because people can't handle long-distance space travel because we're all kind of horrible, horrible people. Except for these 4. Well, 3 of the 4. So they travel out to Peru, and then some weird shit happens. Regan follows Tex out there, and the NSA agent who tried to kill Tex also follows them out there. This all ends up with Fitzpatrick appearing out of nowhere because he's in the alien ship now for reasons. They go inside, they trap both Regan and Cross, the NSA agent, in basically the reactor room. Fitzpatrick gets shot and basically dies, but he explains to Tex how to blow up the ship. Tex blows up the ship and then heads back to San Francisco, meets with Witt, and you just kind of get a wrap-up on everything. It's really goddamn confusing, and it made me want to look up what the game was like, which I'll talk about in just a little bit. There are some minor differences between the book and the game. Most of them have to do with Tex doing everything in the game, and the book having a lot of stuff kind of outsourced to the different characters, so they have a reason to be there and they can do more stuff. All of the characters are pretty much the same from what I've seen. Some of the events are a little bit different. The ending is entirely different from the book. The game stops right after the ship is destroyed, while the book kind of keeps going and wraps things up for the reader. You also hear in the game about how Fitzpatrick is half alien, which is kind of odd but makes sense for a video game. The book does a better job of explaining why Fitzpatrick knows how to fly the ship. It's because he worked in Roswell and happened to do a whole lot of work with the ship and everything. So he was working alongside Malloy while both of them were in Roswell, and that's why he knows how to do the ship stuff. In the game, it's just, well, he's half alien, so he'll figure it out. You get a lot more closure in the book. The plot threads are kind of explained and wrapped up, and you discover just really what's happening in this whole world. There are also some changes to why things are actually happening. When Tex travels to Roswell in the book, he finds some security guards, and there's more talk about how he gets into the actual facility and everything. In the game, he just kind of shows up and the base is deserted and goes inside. So the book's explanation makes a lot more sense than what the game is. Locations and events have kind of changed a little bit. Our characters meet in different locations, like at the end when they're trying to figure out what to do. That meeting is in a hotel room, or Fitzpatrick's hotel room, where in the game it's in Tex's office. And yeah, it makes a whole lot more sense because Fitzpatrick's the one that's putting together the device, the Pandora device that they have, where in the game Tex does it for some godforsaken reason. Like, how the hell would he know? But whatever. Overall, both stories are very good, to be perfectly honest. The book just kind of makes more sense than the video game, but that's kind of like comparing apples to oranges. I would expect a lot of the things in the video game to be done by text, whereas in the book, you kind of have to assume that text doesn't know everything, and you're probably going to question a lot more of the stuff that text does in the book. So, yeah, there's just, from like a realistic standpoint, the book just kind of makes more sense. And from a video game standpoint, the video game obviously makes a lot more sense, because it has the player doing a lot of other things. I like this book quite a bit. There are some annoying parts in it, but overall it was a pretty good book. There are only a few things where I was like, well, that's kind of stupid, and it doesn't really need to be there. The character Vasha is really the only thing that I thought could have been completely eliminated from this book, and you would not have lost anything. It also ties into something else that I thought was pretty dumb, but we'll just talk about Vasha really quick. So Tex breaks into Whit's home in order to steal the Pandora device, or steal the box to help make the Pandora device. And this probably wouldn't have been necessary, in all honesty, but it happens. So Vasha is Whit's niece. She alludes to being held against her will and wants Tex to help her escape. This subplot is immediately abandoned after it's introduced. It made me wonder why it was introduced in the first place. So Tex is running through this house trying to find a way out, and he stumbles across Vasha in a bathroom. And she says, "You need to help me escape or I'll scream and let everybody know that you're here." Tex basically says, "Yeah, go ahead and scream, I'm out of here." She screams, he runs off, gets out of the house, and you never hear about Vasha again until the end of the book, where he lets Whit know, hey, maybe you should let her out every once in a while, and Whit just kind of ignores it. I have no idea why Vasha is even here. You could have just completely cut that out and everything would have been fine. Aside from that, just his whole interactions with Whit are strange. Like, if he had just bothered to tell the truth at any point to Whit, he probably would have just gotten the box and everything would have been okay. But no, he just goes through this whole tangled web of lies that is completely unnecessary and just causes him problems. He's still able to get the box and escape from Whit's house, but I feel like if he had just told the truth and maybe gotten Fitzpatrick on the phone instead of the stupid journalist, he probably would have been just fine. It was just one of those parts where I'm like, it makes sense that he's conveniently a lying piece of crap, because he's kind of a lying piece of crap throughout most of this. But in this one case, you could have just had him tell the truth, and everything would have been okay. Aside from that stuff, there isn't too much that I don't like about this book. It's a pretty fun story that reminds me of like comic books or the 1930s detective story. The story, just kind of made me go out and want to see what else is in the series, like looking at the different video games that are based on Tex Murphy, or seeing what other books there were. And I stumbled across quite a bit. It does seem kind of odd that this is based on the fourth book and they didn't start with the first one, but it was probably because the fourth game was coming out soon, so they wanted to get something out there to kind of hook people in or capitalize on the license in some way. The Pandora Directive is a fun detective story. It brings in some conspiracy theory stuff about aliens and the US government. The world that this story exists in is really interesting. It's dark and it's grimy, and it's just really cool to read stories about it. Almost everyone in this book just constantly smokes, and they just drink like a fish. Except for one person who gets murdered, but, he's not all that important. It feels like a 1930s detective story that's set in a dystopian future where just everything has gone wrong and people are just scraping by and trying to make their way through everything. It's not overly technologically advanced for a future setting, but one that's kind of further along than we were back in the 1990s and in the early 2000s. So you could kind of understand that not a lot has changed, really. You have a few things that are a bit different, like you have flying cars in 2040 something, but it isn't overly advanced. Like, we haven't solved all of our problems with technology or anything like that. It's pretty cool. Anyway, that's going to wrap things up. Let me know what you think in the comments section below, and I will talk to you all later. Bye.